This is not just a story. It's a memory wrapped in flame, carved into ash, and carried by the voices of those who refused to die quiet. When the sun died, they came with fire. When the drum stopped, the chain spoke. But even in darkness, resistance whispered. And someone listened. This is the first breath of rebellion. This is the fire Daniel walked through. This is how it began. The goat was the first to die. It stumbled at the edge of the compound just before sunrise, blood dripping from its eyes. Elder Aya had barely stood to stretch her back when the animal collapsed beside her firewood pile, twitching like it had seen something the living should not. By mid-morning, 3 more were dead. By evening, the river was black. Daniel, 13 years old, barefoot and dust-covered, crouched behind the clay wall of his mother's hut and watched the world change. He didn't speak. His father, Jonah, stood at the village square with the others, machete in hand, face soaked in sweat. The sky above Oju was red. Not sunset red, angry red. Like someone had torn the clouds open and poured in blood. The elders called it a sign. The youth called it a curse. That night, no stars came out. No wind. No frogs. No crickets. Only the hum of something in the distance, something Daniel had never heard before. Not a generator. Not thunder. It sounded like metal. And the next morning, they arrived. The Ash Lords. 3 trucks. Old, rusted, covered in red clay. Their tires crushed your mounds and ran over drying cassava. Men jumped down, faces covered in black paint, bodies laced with charms and bullets. One of them wore a half-band soldier's vest with a foreign flag still sewn to the chest. They didn't ask questions. They pulled Jonah from the crowd, kicked his knees in, and shoved the rifle into his mouth. "This land belongs to us now," their leader growled, his voice deep and soaked in smoke. "We take food. We take labor. And if you resist, we take your name from the earth." Daniel watched from the shadows. His mother, Grace, held him back as he trembled. They lined the elders in the square, stripped them to the waist, and made the children watch. The leader, Bola, they called him, held up a rusty branding iron and pressed it into Jonah's back. The scream Daniel heard that they never left him. It echoed through the trees, up to the red sky, and deep into his bones. And when Bola turned toward the boy's hut, eyes scanning for more slaves, Daniel slipped awake, barefoot, breath shallow, heart hammering, into the bush behind the compound. He didn't look back. Not even when the flames rose. Not even when his mother screamed his name. He just ran. And as he ran, the ash began to fall from the sky like dry rain. The sky over Orokam village was dark, even at noon. Clouds hung low like torn rags. The trees had stopped rustling. The birds were gone. Only the flies remained, swarming the bodies left behind. Daniel hid beneath a termite mound just outside the village. His skin itched. His throat was dry. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. He hadn't spoken in 3. He watched from the bush as the Ash Lords built their camp. They weren't soldiers. Not anymore. They wore parts of old army uniforms and torn green trousers, stolen boots, rusted dog tags. Some had charms tied to their necks, others painted their faces with engine oil and ash. Their camp sat on what used to be Orokam's primary school. Chalkboards now held prisoner names. Classrooms had been turned into cells. They used chains to drag people from nearby villages, men, women, even children. If you could walk, you walked. If you were weak, you disappeared. Their leader, Bola, ruled with fear. He sat on the headmaster's chair, under a broken fan that hadn't spun in years. He never raised his voice. He didn't need to. His eyes were enough, cold, calculating, evil. Daniel watched as 2 boys tried to escape through the back fence. They didn't make it 10 steps before a whistle blew. Bola stood, walked to the yard, and called out calmly, "Bring them." Two enforcers dragged the boys by their necks and forced them to kneel. Bola opened a small case. Inside, a lighter and kerosene in a beer bottle. "Let them be an example," he said. Daniel turned away before the screaming started. His fist clenched in the dirt. He wasn't brave. Not yet. But the anger in his chest was beginning to wake up. He crept away from the mound, deeper into the bush, until he reached a hidden yam barn his father once showed him long ago, buried beneath a rock, sealed with palm leaves. Inside, he found the machete. Old, rusted, but still sharp. He touched the blade with his thumb and whispered, "I will not die a slave." And far away, inside the Ash Lord's camp, a girl named Amaka, chained to a school desk, bruised but alive, opened her eyes and whispered the same words. Night in Orokam used to be full of drums and moonlight. Now it was ruled by boots and gunfire. The Ash Lords moved like snakes through the forest, silent, fast, and organized. They knew the bush paths better than the villagers. Some of them were born here, raised here, before they picked up guns and chose fire over farming. The invasion didn't come with a warning. It came with fog. At 4:12 a.m., the sound of cutlasses cutting through thick forest leaves echoed like whispers. Dogs began to bark, then stopped. Babies cried in their mothers' arms. Chickens flew in circles, feathers falling like the ash from the sky. Then, boom! A homemade bomb exploded near the old water tank. That was the signal. Within seconds, the Ash Lords flooded the village from all sides, through cassava farms, across the stream, even under the broken footbridge. They carried torches wrapped in nylon, rifles tied with jute rope, and war charms of cowrie and bone. Villagers ran barefoot, half-dressed, through the narrow footpaths. Some didn't make it. Anyone caught was dragged to the school. They stormed every compound, men in front, women behind. Kerosene bottles lit and hurled into thatched roofs. Screams echoed through the village square. Smoke rose into the red sky. Classroom 2B, once a place where children learned to write their names, was now a cage. Tin buckets filled with water doubled as toilets. The air stank of fear, sweat, and blood. The blackboard read, "Property of the ASH Lords," in charcoal. Daniel had made it back to the edge of the village just before sunrise. He saw it all from behind a stack of firewood beside the abandoned church. He saw Bola. Calm. Clean. Surrounded by enforcers. His face painted with a red palm cross. His rifle slung across his back like a hunter returning from a kill. He stood in the village square and said only one sentence. "You live by my rules or you die for free." Then he raised his hand, and a woman was shot. Daniel dropped his head. He didn't cry. He didn't pray. He moved. Quietly. Into the church compound. Into the back room, where old Bibles and chalkboards gathered dust. He found what he needed, 2 gallons of palm oil, a broken torch, and a torn church bell rope. And a memory. His father's voice. "If you can't fight them with strength, fight them with silence." Daniel tied the rope around his waist, dipped the torch in oil, and stepped back into the shadows. Inside classroom 2B, Amaka opened her eyes again. She had heard the gunshot. She had seen the fire. But this time, she also saw a flash of movement near the window. A hand signal. 3 fingers. Daniel's signal. Her heart beat faster. She smiled, even with a bruised lip. The boy was still alive. And he had returned. Night fell like a blanket of iron over the ruins of Orokam. The sky above was heavy with smoke, stars swallowed by ash. Somewhere in the camp, a woman was coughing. Somewhere else, a guard was laughing. There were no drums. No crickets. Just the kind of silence that made bones ache. Daniel crouched beside the broken drainage pipe behind the school's old fence. His heart thudded against his ribs like a goat trying to escape a cage. He was dressed in the dead guard's uniform, torn green trousers, a sweat-stained shirt, and a red scarf tied loosely around his neck. It was his first time this close to the camp since his escape. And now, he was going back in. He slipped through the fence hole, pressing his body against the cold cement wall of the headmaster's abandoned office. Inside the camp, torches flickered, lighting up the cracked buildings and the haunted faces of the captured. Children, no older than 10, were forced to wash blood from the ash lord's boots. The older ones shoveled ash from burn pits. Women cooked beside a rusting diesel drum. A man screamed from the punishment corner near the broken school bell. But Daniel kept low. He had one goal: reach Amaka. Pass her the blade. And tell her, it's time. Suddenly, footsteps. 2 guards. They were heading toward him, laughing and dragging a sack full of looted bread. Daniel pressed flat against the wall. They stopped just 10 feet from him. You see the girl with the long legs? The one from Otobi. Bola says she go enter his room tomorrow. Shebi he done tire from the last one, the other snorted. Daniel's jaw clenched. But he said nothing. Did nothing. Not yet. The guards turned and moved off. He exhaled. Quickly, he darted across the courtyard to the narrow corridor behind classroom 3A. Through the open window, Amaka was visible. She was sitting by the blackboard, pretending to do nothing. 2 other girls were beside her. There were no chains, only fear, and fear was stronger. Daniel whistled once. She looked up. He tossed the blade, wrapped in cloth, through the broken pane. She caught it like it was her own heartbeat. No words. Just a nod. Then he pointed. Behind the headmaster's office, he had lit a small fire. It was slow. Controlled. Enough smoke to confuse. Not enough to burn the school, yet. He turned, walked casually across the yard, and made his way toward the dormitory block. Then the bell rang. Not for class. For lockdown. Everyone, into position. The Ash Lord scrambled. Guards formed a circle. Guns raised. Sirens howled. Smoke now poured out from the side of the office. Bola stepped out of the command hut, shirtless, with a hunting knife tucked into his waistband. His eyes scanned the courtyard like a hawk. Who started that fire? No one answered. He grabbed one of the children. Was it you? Daniel froze. He was 10 feet away, hidden in the shadows of the dormitory. One move, and he could throw the dagger. Aim for the throat. But not yet. Then, chaos. A girl screamed. The one from Otobi had stabbed the guard in the leg. Amaka had begun. The rebellion had started. Bola spun around. Seize her. Amaka ran through the side corridor, heading for the water tower. Daniel moved. He flung the torch into the diesel drum by the kitchen. Whoosh! Flames rose. Guards panicked. Captives fought back. A bucket struck a skull. A hot pot scalded an attacker. One woman tore free from her chains and picked up a rock. Bola roared, "Kill them all." Daniel leapt onto the broken veranda, machete in hand. "No," he shouted. And for the first time since the sky turned red, the camp heard a voice that did not belong to fear. Smoke from the burning kitchen soared into the sky like a signal to the gods, casting the night in an eerie red hue. Sparks floated across the camp like angry fireflies. Somewhere in the distance, a baby wailed. Then silence. Then, boom! A guard's gun misfired into the air. And just like that, the rebellion began. Daniel was already moving. His machete sang as it met the first guard's shoulder, sinking deep through bone and cloth. The man collapsed, eyes wide, blood soaking the sand beneath him. Across the yard, Amaka had climbed the water tower, using the narrow maintenance pipe. From there, she screamed, "Today, we choose to live." Her voice ripped through the air like a war drum. Captives all across the camp snapped out of their fear. The boy from Otobi threw a stool at his overseer. An old man used his chain like a whip. A woman shoved a flaming log into a sleeping guard's chest. The ground became war. The Ash Lords fought back viciously. They weren't just trained, they were brutal. They used fear like a shield, and violence like breath. But this time, fear didn't work. Daniel moved through the camp like a spirit of vengeance. He didn't shout. He didn't boast. He struck with precision. A cut here. A stab there. Then vanished into the smoke. The red scarf hid his face. His machete told his name. By the latrine pit, Amaka kicked a guard off the tower. He hit the concrete with a bone-snapping crunch. She grabbed the megaphone from his belt and shouted, "If you hear my voice, rise. Use your hands, your legs, your chains. Break something. Burn something." And rise, they did. By midnight, the courtyard was filled with screams, fists, broken bones, and fire. Shackles were used as weapons. Cooking pots as shields. Prisoners kicked down the gates to the headmaster's office, dragging out food, tools, and rope. Bola finally stepped out. His eyes scanned the chaos, his blade drawn. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. 3 enforcers surrounded him, bare-chested, faces covered, holding AKs with tape on the triggers. Behind them, Bola's personal drummer began to beat a slow rhythm on an empty fuel tank. Boom, boom, boom. "Get me the boy," Bola growled. "They call him the Red Ghost now," one enforcer said. Bola's eyes darkened. "Then I'll turn his ghost to ash." He began walking toward the fire. But Daniel was already above him, on the water tank now, beside Amaka, holding the megaphone. He lifted it and said just 4 words. "Your time is over." Then he threw the burning torch down. It landed in the fuel line. Fire raced across the ground like a wild dog. Guards scattered. The drumming stopped. The fuel drum exploded. The night turned red. The fire climbed like a hungry spirit, dancing across the schoolyard with teeth of flame and bones of smoke. It swallowed doors, leapt over rooftops, and painted the night sky red. Where once children had learned, the ground now shook with the sound of fighting feet and shouted names. Daniel came through the flames with no fear on his face. His machete was black with blood, but his heart was steady. He moved like the son of the land, stepping where the enemy did not expect, striking where fear had grown roots. Beside the latrine, a young girl shattered the lock of her cage with a broken pot. Near the borehole, an old woman wrapped a scarf around a wounded boy's leg and carried him into the shadows. Even the lame stood up that night. And above them all, the sky washed. Amaka led the girls from the dormitory with soot on her hands and defiance in her eyes. The chains had not broken, but they no longer held power. She guided them through smoke and rubble, whispering courage with every breath. The Ash Lords shouted commands, but the camp was no longer theirs. Their rifles jammed. Their strength faltered. Their own shadows began to flee from them. Then came Bola. He stepped into the courtyard like a wounded lion, holding a cracked bottle filled with fire. His chest was bare, marked with charms. His voice was loud, but empty. "If I cannot rule it," he roared, "I will bury it." But fire listens to no man. And Daniel did not run. He walked through the broken door of the headmaster's office, past burning books and fallen walls, and stood before Bola without trembling. The machete was ready. The boy no longer feared death. Bola attacked first, but Daniel's feet were guided by silence. They fought between flames and ashes, blood mixing with dust. One swing. One scream. One breath. When it ended, Bola lay still. The fire behind him roared louder than before. Amaka came to Daniel's side. She did not speak. She took his hand. And around them, the people, once slaves, once voiceless, gathered in the courtyard. The chains were gone. The camp was burning. But in their eyes, something new had come. Not just survival. Freedom. It belonged to resistance.